And then just watching the trajectory of their life and how getting in community and serving on a team, because we care for each other as a team too, and we're for each other. And so you can just jump on in no matter where you've been or what you've done.
Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Intentional Churches podcast. And this podcast just really exists to give you practical wisdom and insight into leading your church and aligning to the Great Commission. And this season, we've been taking a deep dive into this idea of radical alignment in our churches and radical alignment to the Great Commission. Now, if you're listening to these episodes and wondering how your church maybe can get started on the journey of radical alignment, we actually have a free ebook for you. It's only about a 15-minute read and will help get you and your church pointed in the right direction when it comes to this topic of radical alignment. So you can download the ebook for free by visiting intentionalchurches.com/podcast. We've got a great episode in store today. And so as usual, I'm joined by my good friend, Doug Parks. What's up, Doug?
How's it going, Erin? Congrats on your Dodgers.
That's right. Let's go. Let's go. Good to be with you. And hey, we've got another friend today, Sarah Cole from Mission Church in Ventura. And so, Sarah, it's good to be with you. Would you just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are, what you do? Just give us the rundown on Sarah Cole.
All right. Hey, guys. So glad to be here today. I was born and raised in California, lived in England for a little bit, came back. I ended up getting into the insurance industry in the 90s, and I've been married for 30 years. And then my husband and I opened up an independent marketing organization, and I was doing case design and sales and administration. And then in about 2012-ish, I started to go back to church. My mom was in a bad place medically and kind of brought me back to God because I was raised in the church. And then I just started getting into ministry, like right away, like women's ministry, care team. And then I found Mission, jumped in and volunteered, got in a group, all those things that, they set up for you to do. And then I ended up getting hired and started right before COVID, and then everything changed. And so I've been running. So I've been the last couple of years, I've been leading the welcome team, but I've been doing it for over 4.5. And it's been a interesting journey trying to launch a team during COVID, like to relaunch. So when I was brand new to staff, but yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So here's the highlights. I hear England, I hear insurance, I hear ministry. Wow, that is quite the journey. We have been talking in this season, particularly of the podcast, about radical alignment and making sure that our teams are all getting aligned in the direction of the Great Commission. We just believe that Jesus has some pretty clear things to say. And I love that Doug often talks about getting back to the basics, like getting back to the basic blocking and tackling of our faith and empowering the people in our churches to do that. And so because of you and your experience working and leading like the welcome area of your church, we wanted to just get to know a little bit more of how are you doing that and how are you helping that to be aligned? And so would you just start by telling us just a little bit about the culture maybe of the county that your church is in, Ventura County, and then maybe just a little bit about the journey your church has been on the last few years, like baptisms, attendance, things like that. Like just give us a little bit of the context of your environment.
Well, agriculture is one of Ventura's biggest businesses. And so we have a lot of farming going on here. And also it's a really big surf town. So it's kind of like a farmers, surfers kind of town. It's a town that has a lot of grit, but not a whole lot of polish. And so kind of like our building was kind of designed with not a lot of polish going along with that culture. And we have had over 900 baptisms in the last 3+ years. And yeah, it's crazy. We just had a couple weekends ago, another 45, and we keep saying, where are these people coming from? So it's been amazing, the momentum that we have going. And we are up over 50% in our numbers in the last 3 years. And so we're running about 1,800-ish plus on the weekend attendance. So there's been a lot of movement and a lot of momentum.
Yeah. Wow.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, like we are in a lot of churches, and that is staggering. And it begs a whole lot of other questions I'm going to have.
Mhm.
But first, can you tell us what surfing farmers look like? Because that is a picture I cannot
Yeah,
get
I
out of my
know.
head.
I was like, those don't go together in my brain, but
I think it's a little bit of both. Like you can be
Yeah.
a farmer and you can surf. So, but it's just a really laid back kind of town,
wow.
as in
Yeah.
like here at Mission, like it's very, very laid back, like what we wear to church, maybe unlike some other churches. So
The
Yeah,
phrase,
I've been there a few times.
Yeah,
Yes, it's
the
great.
phrase,
It's a great town.
more grit and less polish. I want that to be my life motto.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Sarah, thanks for helping us just into the context of just your environment a little bit. It seems like your team has been pretty focused on like mobilizing and activating people to personally own the Great Commission over the last few years. Like I know you guys have been on this journey. How has that affected like the welcoming environment that you lead? Like what are your biggest challenges? What are your biggest victories when you think about welcoming people into your church when you know that you're trying to help everybody own the Great Commission themselves?
Well, I think that my biggest challenge is that my team is over 200, so it's the size of some small churches. Jim always reminds me of that, and I'm like, oh, that's a good perspective to look at it that way. So what I've had to do is figure out how to give away ministry in this last season. How can I empower leaders? I have 5 teams within my team. I am the welcome team, but I have the parking team. I have Connection Point. I have the greeters. I have the coffee servers. And I have the auditorium team as well. So I've got a lot of moving teams and a lot of services. We're at 4 services. And maybe at 5 at some point next year. Who knows what will happen? So my biggest challenge was, how do I give away this ministry? How do I launch new leaders to take ownership in a team? And so it kind of started when Jim was on sabbatical, and I was meeting with Mike. And so we kind of like put it on a whiteboard. He's like, here's all your areas, and you need to find a leader that can own that. So I started with my husband, who leads the parking team. And so I said, okay, I want you to care for this team and encourage this team and take them out. He got an expense card, and to really like build into that team. And then it kind of just started from there. And then I started writing job descriptions, and I got a midweek volunteer and someone that coordinates my greeters, and she does all my midweek volunteer stuff, and she coordinates the greeters. And then I just asked someone in for Connection Point to lead Connection Point and to make that a better experience and to help manage the care for that team. And then I have a coffee team lead, which he's super excited, and he's building that team like crazy, and they're recruiting for me, and they feel like they have ownership and that they can give it away to others and to invite others in. And so it's been a great experience. And so I've almost filled all of those, asked in, and I didn't like really know, how am I going to do this? But it just kind of happened, and I just started with one, and then it just kind of, God put people on my heart to ask in. And it's so exciting when they get asked in, because it's just, they feel just really just encouraged and empowered that I would give them that opportunity to be like, hey, can you lead this for me and help me build this part of the team out?
Sarah, I'm guessing some of our listeners are like just blown away. You may not have this perspective, but what you just said, 200 volunteers, team leads over 5, giving away ministry. I mean, it's like mic drop moments, like nonstop, because so many, and I've filled all my slots. I mean, there are so many churches I'm in where this is not the case. So I just wonder, I know Erin's going to have other questions, but talk to us for just a minute about your recruitment strategy. Like, how did you go about recruiting that large of a number? And then on top of that, leaders of that number. I love that you're giving away ministry. And it really is the model at IC that we try to follow. Like, the job of staff is to facilitate the people of the church doing the work of ministry, not to do the work of ministry. So I just wanted to give you kudos, but then also ask you, how did you get here?
Well, I mean, it started in the parking lot in COVID, and there was a list of 180 volunteers, and I had to engage 40 volunteers to like come and help in the parking lot to serve. And it kind of started there from building. And then of course your numbers are lowered, during COVID. So you don't have as many volunteers to pull from. The pool isn't as great. And then as we've continued to grow, there's been, more volunteers interested. So I just kind of have a process that I go through as far as the recruiting piece, but then there's also a huge care piece. So I don't know if you want me to talk about the care piece first or the recruiting piece, or either, but so with recruiting, there's just a system that we have in place, and we have a process queue. When people come in through the app, or people come in from signing up for a start party or at connection point, they specifically say they want to get onto the welcome team. I have volunteers bringing me people all the time saying, "Hey, this is so much fun. You've got to do this. I want to introduce you to this person, and can you get them on the team?" And then I act on it. I act and I work those cues regularly. And so I have a process when they come in. There is a first contact, and then I text at the same time, and then I just keep after people until I can just be like, "Hey, when do you want to shout out? When do you want to get on the schedule?" And so I just have used that process. Probably part of it's been my sales background and administration for my company, because I still work for my company and I work full time here at Mission. So I'm doing both, but that's kind of turnkey. My other business, I've been doing it a lot of years, 30 plus years.
Wow.
But so the recruiting piece is, I'm just super consistent with it. And I think that you have to if people, there's an urgency, right? If people want to jump on a team, then contact them and do it whatever way you can, and then keep going after them. And one of the things I do is after 3 attempts, I'm like, "Hey, I've tried to reach out to you, and if you're not interested, I'll just take you off the list." And boom, "Oh no, I'm interested. Sorry," that kind of thing. And then the other thing is the care is so important for me on my team, and being relational with my team. On a Sunday when I have call outs for an illness, a death, or whatever it is, or someone that doesn't show up, I am following up on Monday with every single person, checking in with them, writing cards, constantly following up. And I think that goes a long way. I had a volunteer the other day that just said, "I've been meaning to tell you, but that card you sent me just meant so very, very much. And I so appreciate it." And I think that makes your team feel seen and heard in a lot of ways. So I feel like care is a big piece. And then you have to go after it. You just have to go after it. It's Sunday's always coming. And even if I never have too many volunteers, I'll never turn anybody away.
In the spirit of just talking about radical alignment to the Great Commission, one of the things that I know is really important to the mission of intentional churches is people thinking about their ones. Who is the one person that, the way I often say it is that's close to you but far from God, that you're trying to have a spiritual conversation with, and maybe even eventually invite them to come with you to church, And so part of radical alignment is, yes, equipping people to do the work of the ministry, but also if we're going to be working and sending people out to invite their ones to come to our churches better be ready to receive those people. And so how are you thinking about preparing your church, your place, your building for ones as guests on a weekend? How are you thinking about preparing the space for brand new people? Because your people, your welcome team, are the ones that are going to encounter these people right away. Mm-hmm. And so how are you helping your team think about this? How are you preparing your space to be ready for ones, people far from God that might be willing to give church a chance?
I mean, I think, like I said earlier, we have we have an unpolished look in our building, and we don't, we play music that they'll relate to when they walk in. And the thing I think about my team is, with my huddles, it kind of starts there with those huddle leaders to set the tone and the excitement and the clarity for the day. And they are all aware of that. We are here to welcome in those ones. And no matter what they're carrying, we don't know what they've come in with. They don't, whatever it is, and that to be accepting of that. And we talk about a lot from street to seat. That's big. And so the tone is set in the huddles that to look out for those people with the deer in the headlights, look out for them, help them, walk them to their destination, and answer any questions. So I think it starts a lot with the huddles, and those leaders know the value and the ethos of mission, right? And so a lot of my team, like when I do my new volunteer lunches, like we talk about, how did you feel when you walked in the door of mission? That's what we want to be when you are in that position, whether it's a greeter or a coffee server. We're greeting everywhere we are on my team, even in the parking lot. So how you felt when you walked in that's what you want to do for those that are walking in. And, it's funny because I have a lot of ones on my team. They can just hop right in. I have a funny story. Well, it's not.
What?
Yes.
You have ones on your team?
Oh yeah. I have people that I had one guy that came up to me and he's like, I'm getting baptized. I just got out of jail. And I really need to volunteer because I need community hours. And I'm like, great. And so then I met with him and then he was serving and really shy, really timid. He's growing in his faith and to be able to see his journey and how he's changing his life. And then he was like, when I'm done with my hours, I'm still going to serve. I really love doing this. And so he's still on the team. But I have another one where this guy was in prison for over 20 years. And his wife now was serving on my team at the door. And he was connected to mission through some friends. And he did I don't know what he did, but he was in there a long time. And so he started coming to mission and he jumped on the team. And so what's cool about that is like he's standing at the auditorium doors, and a one can walk in and can relate to him. Right. Can see that, oh yeah, that's my guy, cause he's pretty intense. Like when you look at him, but he's like super great guy. Right. So there's a place on my team that you don't have to be all cleaned up. Anybody can come onto my team. And it's interesting because before baptisms, after baptisms, I get a lot of people that want to jump in and serve. And then just watching the trajectory of their life and how getting in community and serving on a team, because we care for each other as a team too. And we're for each other. And so I think that's something that's different, I think, about mission and the team, that we can you can just jump on in no matter where you've been or what you've done.
Yeah. I love that. I love the image of the way your culture, you have said, is not polished. Like Ventura County is not polished. And so you're not trying to make your church really polished because that would be countercultural. Like that would feel almost off-putting probably to ones. And so I just love that point. And for our listeners to be thinking about not just what do we want to be true of our church culture, but looking at the culture around us. Vegas culture is going to be very different. We do not have farming surfers in Vegas. That is not a thing here. And so to be thinking culturally what exists here and how do we replicate that in such a way that a one would still feel comfortable and not out of place? Because I imagine if you guys were super polished at mission, that would be uncomfortable for many ones that come in and like, feel like I'm not good enough for this place, or this feels too fancy or too whatever for me. So I just appreciate that point.
But we designed our building through the lens of our one, basically.
Yeah.
And so I think that makes that's huge. That's a huge impact.
Yeah, that's big. Doug, do you want to add anything to that?
I just appreciating, Sarah is just dropping very pragmatic tips for, kind of this topic we're in, Erin, of, radical alignment. I talk a lot about institutional versus individual ownership of the Great Commission, and your welcome team or your greeting teams that Sarah leads. These are the front lines, because oftentimes a one, who knows if my personal one is going to actually show up the first time to a service with me or just on their own, and that Sarah and her team have made it so that environment is prepared to receive is awesome. And I just think we could learn so much. There's so many of these things we can unpack for the listeners to get into. But one of the things that I'm hearing as an undercurrent or a theme of what Sarah's saying is a trend. I've been saying this a lot lately. Just because we can automate doesn't mean we should. And what I mean by that is so many churches right now have made their welcome process very transactional, where it's about, we can, with technology, do click funnels. And if you give us your information, we can automate text messages and text in church, which is fine by itself as a strategy. But if it's not leading to a relational connection, just this old rule of thumb is still true today. And that is somebody who is new or pursuing Jesus, new to Jesus or pursuing Jesus, needs 7 relational contacts as quickly as we can get. So this is why I'm leaning back into this model of just because we can automate doesn't mean we should. And we really need to go back to some of these old school blocking and tackling methods that I hear Sarah describing, where it's even down to the recruitment. She's making it incredibly relational. It's much more difficult to say no to a person than it is to disregard an email or an automated communication piece. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just appreciating the conversation. And I don't know what you all think about it, but I'm like, again, Erin makes fun of me all the time, Sarah, about being old. She makes these little wisecracks.
Right.
So, but I'm kind of like, yeah, we should really be going back to whites of the eye strategy. How do we do that? Like, old school things like section hosts, where we're on purpose on the hunt for one, so we can try to connect to them relationally. So I'm not really asking a question here, but I just wanted to download, Sarah, just my compliments to you of making this. It's you could tell it's in your DNA. It's just second nature to you to make it a relational proposition across the board, from recruitment, care, and then intersection with ones who are attending your mission.
Yeah, Sarah, is there anything else you do, like intentionally, or ways that you train to keep it relationally focused and not transactional? Or do you feel like you've already kind of mentioned all those things?
No, I mean, I do quite a few things. I do, and it's not on the calendar. It's not based on the calendar. It's based on how many people recruited, but I do a new volunteer lunch a couple times a year, invite all the volunteers that are new. And then I kind of cast vision and the value of why we do what we do. And then I thank them. And then we share stories. I ask them to share, stories, about how they got to mission or how they felt, or stories of people that they've encountered while they've been serving. And so I do that. And then this summer, I started with the parking team. And we basically had a strategy meeting because we're getting busier. Like, how are we going to park better? How are we going to make this a better experience? And also casting vision of why we do what we do. If you come into the parking lot and it's a bad experience, you may never come back. And so I wanted to make sure that everybody on that team was aware of why we do it. And I don't think they all understood. So I started there. And this summer I spent my time and I did each individual team and would cast vision and why, and like give them the numbers. Like we have 25 plus new people that are just coming to Connection Point every week. This is why it's so important to do what we do. And so I do that. And then once a year, I gather the whole team together and I do a taco night in the park. And that's where all the teams can come together and hang out. And we have tacos and we have dessert and no business, just connecting with each other because people work different services. And last year we had close to 100 people. So I feel like that relational, I'm super relational with my team. And I don't think it's not transactional at all. Like you're saying, like, it's kind of like, even though that email goes out, I'm segueing back, but even though that email goes out from our process queue in our database and has everything and attachments in there, I follow up immediately the same time. I hit boom, boom with the text. And I think what Doug, that you said, that going back to that, like, I think that is huge, is having that. And then for my team, like my team is excited because we have good energy and they're excited to be there. And we cheer each other on all the time. And then seeing people in my, like, I have a quick story if you don't mind. I had 2 coffee servers on Sunday night. They didn't know each other. They're serving coffee together. And then we had a women's event, Spark. And so then I invited them to help with coffee for that. And then they text me on the side and I'm going to put you guys together. And then they group text me and they're like, you do not know how much this has meant to us because of being on this team, this is somebody I would have never been friends with. And now they're hanging out, so like little stories, like that. So, so I think that's cool, that relational piece that we're building.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. One of the like real priorities of the podcast and the conversations we have is we love to try to give practical advice to our listeners. And so if you're thinking about our listeners, many of which are church leaders or maybe even have similar roles as you, Sarah, what are practical ways you think church leaders can create a welcoming culture? Not just a welcoming environment, but like a culture that is welcoming in their churches. Not just from the staff level, but in their people. Like as you have experienced this, as you guys are reaching ones at Mission, what would you tell to our listeners about how they can create a welcoming culture?
Well, I think first they need to be able to catch the vision of the church, know who you're trying to reach, and know your one, and know the ethos of what and the feel of your church. I think that is so important. And I think also we value hospitality so much. I think that's so important. We haven't talked about that, but our hospitality is really amazing around here. And I think that is huge because people, when they walk in the doors, like it's a safe place to go. I'm going to go get a cup of coffee, right? And then they're kind of blown away. Like, can I pay for the coffee? Can I pay for the donut holes? And we're like, no, have all you want, So I think hospitality is huge in that welcoming. And then being able to, I don't know, having a heart to reach people and like bring people together is like where my heart is, and to make it fun. And also to make sure that your volunteers know the why behind what you do, why you do the things you do. What is the value behind that? I can make examples of things that go wrong and they don't understand, but I have to tell them why we don't do it that way because it doesn't make sense. If you're walking through the door, you don't get a handout at the door because you don't have any references what this handout's for, right? It's always at the auditorium door. So you have to be able to communicate to your team as you're recruiting or to the leader that they have to know the why and know, how the church, how your church, I don't know, functions, but like for me, I had to learn that. I had to learn it. I had to sit down with Jen Oakes during COVID and no, we don't do it this way. We write emails this way. And just those kind of things to know how the church, the vision and all of that and the culture of the church that you're in to begin with when you come as a leader to be able to understand that, because I think that is going to make a big difference.
You've mentioned this a couple times, Sarah. I'm just wondering, you casting the vision to teams, you cast it in recruitment. I heard you say casting vision inside of meetings and even the parking team. Give us your 2 or 3 sentence pitch of what it is for your team. Like when you vision cast, what are you vision casting?
Well, I just, that we're here for new people coming in, and whether it's a one that's lost or whether it's someone that's got church hurt or someone that hasn't been in a church in 40 years. I have a volunteer on my team right now. She hasn't been in church in 40 years and she got invited back. Now she's volunteering and it's just like amazing. So I just kind of talk about that and then the why behind it. Cause then you see, as people come in, you just see the transformation and the growth and just see, how it affects changes the trajectory of their life. So I just cast the vision of why we're doing what we're doing on a Sunday. And it's for every team is the same. It's about the one, the lost or the one that's walking back in, hasn't been in since COVID, walking in with shame, all of those things. And like that, we want to be there for that person. I mean, I have my parking team my husband will recognize that they're new. He'll talk to everybody that walks in and then they're walking them into Connection Point. Where we have really high capacity volunteers to help relationally with those people as they're talking to them. So I use different vision. Like for the parking team, it's like why we need to have an easy parking experience, and then at Connection Point, why we need to have a good relational. It's not transactional. If they don't want to give you all your information, it's okay. They can just write their name. We don't need their address. We just want to give them their free mug and just show them how they can get connected. And then with greeting, just that, and that there's so many new people. That's the big thing is, we have so many new people. So they understand, they get it. I think the team gets it overall because we talk about it enough.
That's great. I just want to reiterate, I think it's really easy for us as church leaders to make assumptions because we live in this world all the time. We talk about the why, we talk about ministry, we talk about our desires for people. And I think it's really easy to set volunteers loose on a bunch of activity with no vision or mission or why for why they're doing that activity. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh my goodness, we have all these volunteers out here doing all these things and they don't even know why they're doing them. They're doing them because they want to serve the church, but they don't have like a compelling reason why. And so I love that just for our listeners to just make sure, like, where are we making assumptions that people know the why when they maybe don't know the why? And it would be good to remember the why and to rehearse the why over and over again. And when you're thinking about radical alignment, our why is the Great Commission. Ultimately, that's our why. And then each individual area can have a specific kind of expression of that. But I just love that emphasis from you to remember the why and to communicate that well.
And we're not trying to fill a spot. It's not about filling a spot.
Sure.
It's about giving it away and having people feel seen and heard and having that being able to give your life for others, to be able to, not take the focus off of you and be on a team. And so it's not just like, I need to fill spots. I want it to be empowering for people when they're there. And then people meet so many new people and they just get so excited. Like my Connection Point volunteers, we try to make it a point, if you've met a couple new people, when you see them next week, go up to them, even if you have to leave Connection Point, and be like, I'm so glad, Mary, that you came back, or whatever. And so we try to just instill that in the Connection Point volunteers, but they're super high capacity there too. But yeah, it's not about filling the spot for sure. It's about giving it away.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Well, Sarah, thanks for sharing some of your just wisdom, insight, experience with us and our listeners. To our listeners, I hope you're thinking about, how do you continue to create a welcoming culture? How do all of our churches become ready to receive ones? And Doug, as usual, I appreciate, I won't make any comments about your age, since you said I make fun of you for your age.
It's fine. I invite it. I'm a Gen Xer. We're gluttons for smart aleck comments.
There you go. Well, everyone, thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Intentional Churches podcast. I just want to remind you, we've got a free ebook for you all about this idea of radical alignment. It's only like a 15-minute read, and you can download it for free by visiting intentionalchurches.com/podcast. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Intentional Churches podcast.